So, this is my first story here, and I want to talk about someone who's in my life that turned out to be a horrible person. Just to let you know, I'm 23 now, and this started when I was 9 years old. I'm gonna start with saying that he never did any of this to me, but I was living in his house at the time it did. Here's a little bit of backstory. When I was a kid, both my mom and dad were alcoholics. They got into physical fights almost every day, and me and my sister were very protective of my mother. We would try to attack my dad when he hurt her, even though I was only 9 and my sister was 14. It never ended well. He beat us as well, and the cops were always called. Until a day, he attacked all of us and got arrested for the last time, and that's where we met Steve. He was a responding officer to the domestic call. Right off the bat, he and my mom had an attraction for each other, and sooner or later, they started dating. Even though it was barely a month after my father got arrested. They'd start talking every day, then they started dating and had a normal relationship. I thought he was the nicest guy I'd ever met. He bought us gifts, took us places, and did anything to make us happy. They dated for maybe close to a year and a half, then they broke up. Not long after, my mom told me something that made my skin crawl. She told me that during the time they were dating, he came over one day and said that he wanted to use the bathroom. It took him a long time to come back, so my mom went upstairs to check what was going on, and she caught him in my sister's room sniffing her underwear. Even after seeing that, she never broke it off because she was the type of person who always wanted to feel needed, even if it put me and my sister in danger. I blame it on the alcohol. He'd always try to stay in me and my mom's life, even though she was dating other men. But on June 15th of 2007, when I was 15 years old, my mom passed away. She had a brain aneurysm and was put on life support for 2 days before we could say goodbye. Even Steve showed up to the hospital to say goodbye. I thought it was very nice of him, but I didn't know how he knew. She passed away the next day, and since I was in foster care the time it happened, I was placed in a teen psych ward in the same hospital for a month and a half on suicide watch. Nobody in my family came to visit, but Steve came every single day. He would take me out if they let me, bought new pool cues and ping pong paddles for all the kids. He was always there. When I was finally let out of the foster care system, they let me move into his house. Now, let me say, this is where it got messed up. 1 week before I was planned to get let out was my birthday. So they let me have a weekend visit for 2 days away from the hospital. As a gift, he bought me a brand new Mac laptop, brand new cell phone, headphones, and all that jazz. I was excited to set everything up over the weekend. I download free music, and back in my time, there was a program I used called LimeWire. I'm sure most remember it. So I went to Steve's computer since he had the program to download new music to transfer onto my Mac. That's when his download history came up. It was all videos of child porn, videos that were titled 4-year-old tied up and gagged, and 3-year-old gangbanged. I freaked out. I knew what it was, and this is where I will get the award for stupidity. I said nothing. I was tired of being placed in foster home to foster home for 5 years, so I said nothing. I was actually scared as fuck to move in. I was there for about 5 months until I went to his computer again to download more music. I guess it slipped my mind at that second as to what he had, because I never thought of it until this moment, until the new videos came up, and I got terrified. He had never done anything to me, but I started realizing that he was grooming me, buying me thousands of dollars of gifts within those months. I'm also going to point out that He was retired from the police force after 25 years and was working odd jobs after. I had a hospice worker that would visit me every few weeks since my mom had passed to make sure that I was okay. I finally let it slip. I told her what I found, and the next day, I was taken into a new foster home. Months and months of statements later, he got charged with child pornography. They found hundreds of images and over hundreds of videos on his computer. He was sentenced to 9 months in prison. And I've never talked to him since, but I've been following the media. A year after he got out, he was arrested again for more pornography and assault with a deadly weapon. It turns out he had sexually assaulted and attacked the nurse who would come in and check on his 87-year-old stepmom, who had also lived with us. After the first case came out, another girl came forward to finally tell her story. He abused her. Back in the 90s, he had groomed himself to get close to the mother, then got close to the daughter and abused her. It shook me because it sounded all too familiar. She said it was because I came forward that she finally had the courage to stand up and come out against this man. I feel that was the biggest win of all of this. I felt blessed that I was able to help her come forward. I honestly don't know how much time he got for that, but not long after, I searched his name again. He's now suing the police force for being too aggressive with him and apparently tackling him in his driveway when he has a bad back. Yeah, right. I haven't heard anything since, but to this day, I feel blessed that he didn't attempt anything with me. I don't even know if he ever thought about it. But I know he's a sick person. Just to throw out there, his defense in court was,
"I had those videos so I could try to find the children and help them."
Yeah, right. Good one. I will leave below a few articles from the cases from where I first caught him, and I'll try to find the most recent. Thank you guys for sticking with me for this long story. As I finished typing the story, I decided to Google his name one more time, and apparently, he's being found not guilty for hurting this poor child. I find that sick.
This happened in Antioch, California. It was around 2 a.m. I was at a friend's house, safe in warm, sheltered suburbia. We were having a lot to drink, chit-chatting and enjoying ourselves. Of course, when you're having fun, time hits the fast-forward button, and those few minutes turn into an hour. I had too much to drink. My friend has a bit of an abrupt bedtime, so I had to dodge out early. Still intoxicated, I felt too shameful thinking I'd be asking too much to stay in his house to sleep off the drunkenness. I suppose he was either too rude or too drunk to consider it himself. Whatever. Sometimes a little inconvenience makes you appreciate everything else. I needed about an hour or so to sober up and drive back. As fast as time passed during my stay, it decided to slow down drastically as soon as I stepped out of his house. It was a cul-de-sac area, a concrete jungle with the stem of the street breaking into a fork. Alongside the road, my car was parked. The only streetlight that worked was in the middle of the cul-de-sac circle, about 80 yards away. I stumbled towards my car, produced my keys, felt the metal line up, opened my door, and shifted to the back seat. I took the leftover newspapers and a sweater in my back seat to cover myself up, because it was a dark, strange, and unfamiliar neighborhood. I was a little scared. I wanted to camouflage myself and not just be some guy awkwardly sitting in the car, waiting for time to pass in order to drive home. I couldn't fall asleep. The uncomfortable feeling of a cheap backseat bed enshrouded in darkness didn't make the chance of slumber any easier. It felt too ominous. And of course, my mind began to wonder, like how the police would shine their lights on me through the window, or a drunk driver hitting my car, and wait. In the distance, about 100 yards away, I could hear footsteps approaching. The gravel scuffled with each step, growing in proximity but periodically taking stops. I wondered why until it made sense in my mind. Whoever it was probably looking through cars carefully with the intent to steal one. I couldn't recall how many cars were on the block, but I counted 3 full stops until he was at my window, breathing. I froze. There was no more than 1 foot between us. The car encapsulated me as I lay hidden beneath the backseat clutter, forming myself into an object, trying my hardest to be unnoticeable, unmoving, and simply not there.
I see you,
said a 40-plus-year-old man in perverse baby talk. Imagine when you're playing hide-and-seek and one of your friends tricks you into coming out. He said it in that tone of voice, as if baiting me, like he was questioning whether the clutter in the back seat was just clutter or a person. I didn't want to move or check the window. I remained clutter. Give me an Academy Award. My body reacted by minimizing my breathing so much that I felt paralyzed. I dare not look. My eyes fixated on the back passenger seat. I didn't blink. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. My heart was pounding so hard it shook my body with each throb. He circled around the car. My ears did not fail me. I heard the steps. I felt like I was part of the car. I could feel him touching the trunk as he carefully pressed down on it, as if to test the alarm, as if to test the alarm, as if to test me. I was in the middle of fight or flight. I couldn't do either without elevating the danger. I was frozen and hoping to God he was just bluffing. He circled the car again. The door handle to my right jiggled. He was pulling on it multiple times.
I see you.
Same tone, but more agitated and stressed, more convinced that he was trying to make the clutter move, revealing itself to be of his expectations, that it was me. That it was me. My muscles tensed like a cow before slaughter. Tap, tap, tap. That had to be metal against glass. Take a penny right now and tap your window. Could it be a crowbar, a knife, a rock, or a gun? My eyes fixated on the seat in front of me, never averting my gaze. Like he was. I was covered enough to where you couldn't see beyond the seat in front of me. I know I couldn't see him, but I could feel his eyes resting on top of me.
My name is Pokerface. What's your name?
His voice changed in a lower, demented, and serious tone. I forced a visual. It wasn't anything human. I already accepted my death. I was ready to be shot in the head, ready to take a life-changing bullet, multiple knife wounds. Just make the sleep bearable, not excruciating as you drain me of life. I wouldn't know how to react. My thoughts grew dimmer. I imagined my friend waking up the next morning after a calm night of safe and sound sleep, only to discover my mutilated, defiled, and bloodied body hanging outside my car door. It was then I heard nothing but my own heartbeat. What was the person doing now? Just staring at me in the middle of the night? Talking to me or messing with a pile in the back seat? Time froze. The footsteps were being swallowed in the distance. Thank God he left. I waited another hour until the sun showed hints of itself. I jumped in my front seat and bolted out of there, wide-eyed and sober.
About 5 years ago, when I was 16 and was attending my last summer at my sleepaway camp in West Virginia. Granted, I was only there for a month, but it was the longest month of my life. My cabin was full of girls I knew from previous summers and a girl no one knew named Mary. She was kind of the oddball out, and it was obvious after a few days that she isolated herself and had a hard time fitting in. So I tried my best to include her in our normal activities while the rest of my friends didn't pay her much attention. After about a week, she started clinging to me, which I figured was because she just liked me as a new friend, and I was the only one to show her any attention. Wherever I went, she was just kind of there, always a step behind me, right in my periphery. We were required to take buddies to the bathroom, and whenever I casually mentioned I was going, she would jump up and volunteer to take me. Nothing weird, I guess. I started noticing strange habits of hers. Whenever we walked to an activity, she would walk next to me, and if she noticed our walking was out of sync, she would skip to adjust it, so we were walking the same way. Now this does sound a little questionable, and I did think maybe I was overthinking it, until several of my friends mentioned that they were noticing this stuff as well, without me saying anything. During meals, we were assigned tables, but even though she sat across the entire dining hall away from me, she never stopped watching. I would go up to the buffet and fill my plate, noticing that as I sat down, she would go up and choose the exact same foods as me, while still watching me. This happened with every activity from art to sports. At this point, I wasn't creeped yet. I was just a little weirded out by her tendencies. On a Tuesday, I was just starting to ride the horse I was newly assigned during a ring lesson. This horse was a little wild from winter off and bucked me off, causing me to be forced to stay in the infirmary during the lesson times for the rest of the week. The following week, I watched as Mary went out of her way to request the same horse that I had fallen off of. I was kind of perplexed by this. Of course, the Tuesday of that week, I watched as she threw herself off that horse and was also forced to stay in the infirmary alone with me. My 1 hour a day that I could escape from her was now also taken away. I started to get really annoyed by her because no matter where I was going, she was always there. We had to switch bunks midway through the session, and I was genuinely angry when she requested not only the same cabin as me, but also the bed next to mine. We both chose top bunks that were aligned on the same wall. I started to notice even weirder things. One day, I was writing a letter home, and felt like I was being watched. I looked to my right, and saw Mary was sitting, facing forward, but her head was cocked to the side, staring at me with a demonic smile. My stomach dropped. A couple of nights after that encounter, I woke up with the same feeling of being watched. It was pitch black, but I grabbed my flashlight to go walk to the bathroom since I was already up. But nope. I turned over with my light to see Mary standing next to my bed with her head at my level, watching me sleep. Just standing in the middle of the cabin, staring. I was speechless. I just figured maybe she needed someone to take her to the bathroom. I started to leave for the bathroom, and she followed. I was thoroughly creeped out by this point. Stuff like that kept happening for the rest of the session, but when her parents finally came to get her, I refused to even look up to say bye. I have never been so happy to leave a place in my life. I can't express the level of creepiness over at the computer, but I can say I literally felt like I was in danger when I was near her. I never want to figure out why she was seemingly so obsessed with me. I was 20, it was really hard to find work in my hometown. I eventually managed to get a job though, as an administrator. I don't know what sort of place this is called in English, but I'll describe it for you. People who commit very serious crimes, usually arson, murder, or something similar. They're usually believed to suffer from mental issues or personality disorders, and are placed there instead of a normal prison. You know what kind of place I'm speaking of. Yeah, that's where I worked. I'm a rather petite woman, just over 50 kilograms and looking years younger than my actual age. Easy target, you might say. I rarely interacted with the interns, apart from being the one to let them in and out of the gate when they had reason to be outside the facility, and then always escorted by the guards. There was one man, a short and broad dude from the Philippines, who always looked at me with the creepiest smile you've ever seen, eyeing my ID badge closely every time. I of course had no right to know what those people had done to end up in this place, but my boss felt the need to tell me about this guy. "Watch out for him," she said. "He's a serial killer and an arsonist. Never let your guard down. People think he's stupid, but he's not. He's actually over average intelligence." The summer turned into fall, and in September that year, I left that job to go back to university. It wasn't until 2 years later, in December just before Christmas, that it happened. I was shopping for a bracelet for my sister when I heard a whisper right next to my ear. "Hello, Josephine." I turned around and found myself eye to eye with the stalker arsonist guy. He had also remembered my name. I didn't buy the bracelet and left in a hurry, certain that he had only been out on one of his short visits outside and that the guards were close by watching him. They did this to let the interns train to being let out again. They give them freedom under a watchful eye 1 hour a week to see how they handle it. I didn't see any guards that I recognized, but I was sure they were there. I went home. My sister and I have a flat, each on the top floor of the apartment building, and when we were both home, we keep our doors open, and kids and pets can freely roam between our homes. We were in my flat, decorating the Christmas tree, when I heard the steps. Not the light steps of my niece, and definitely not the fast steps of my fiancé. It was heavy, slow, determined steps of the arsonist. He had found me, and he was on his way up. I threw myself at the door, locking it shut. My sister had no idea what was going on, but I told her to take the kids, go into the bathroom, lock the door, and call the cops. I stood by the locked front door, listening to the steps, and I could hear him roaming around in my sister's apartment. He had found her Christmas cards and was reading the names of her children out loud. Then he started searching for something while whistling happily. My sister, always a rock, was keeping the kids calm in the bathroom, while I was listening to him merrily explaining that he needed tools that could break the lock open. Since I knew who he was, and the police knew who he was, they arrived very quickly, and soon the situation was resolved. It turned out that since there are too few places to keep those people, some had been let out early to make room for those considered more dangerous. I guess he found me by chance that day in the store, and decided there and then to go after me. It was a frightening experience, and if my boss hadn't warned me so vigorously about this man, I wouldn't have acted as fast as I did. I live in the deep south in a rural small town. We are near towns that border the Gulf of Mexico, so we have public beaches, One night, my husband and I and our favorite couple friends decided to go to one of these public beaches in our area, throw some chicken on the grill, and party into the wee hours of the morning. This was always one of our favorite things to do on a Friday or Saturday night during the warm months of spring and summer. So, to describe this particular beach, it's pretty isolated, but it's just off a main highway. At night, the occasional 18-wheeler and other cars pass, but not a steady stream, just vehicles here and there. But the picnic tables are in a long straight line, with the building housing the restrooms kind of in the center. Past the tables, there is a wide expanse of white sand, and then the beach past that. I hope that gives you somewhat of a visual. So as soon as the four of us get to the beach, our hubbies want to drive to the next town to buy beers. So they leave, and my friend Jana and I are sitting on top of a picnic table, catching up on gossip, laughing, and occasionally turning over the chicken on the grill. I've stayed here before, and have never thought anything of being afraid. It's always been safe, and most of the time, nobody stops here at night, unless they have to go to use the bathroom. Anyway, our husbands had not been gone long when a van passed by. We just glanced at the van and kept talking, but after a minute or so, the van came back. I'm a little nervous because from the time I was a child, I've had quite a few creepy encounters, but I kinda shrugged my nervousness off, thinking maybe it was just someone coming to use the public restrooms, or even possibly someone we knew. So the way the tables are situated, they each have several parking spaces in front where you pull in. The front bumper of the car would be facing the tables, but they pulled in sideways, where the passenger side was facing us. My friend Jana and I just looked at each other, kind of wondering what was up with this. This guy got out of the driver's side and walked around to where we were. The side door flew open and a guy climbed out and just kind of leans against the side of the van, and I could see another guy in the back seat, but didn't get a good view of him. The guy in the passenger seat did not get out, but kept looking around nervously. So the driver walks around to where we were and says,
"Good evening. How are you lovely ladies doing?"
or something goofy like that. All of the guys had longish hair, and the guy leaning against the side of the van looked like a biker. He was tall, kinda chubby, and had long brownish hair, and had a bandana tied around the back of his head. I'm not good at guessing ages, but I would guess that they were around their mid-30s. The driver looked a little older, with grayish hair. So, we're trying to be polite without encouraging anything. The driver was the only one that talked to us, which I thought was strange. The guy standing by the van had his arms crossed and looked mean. The driver asked why such lovely ladies as ourselves were out here all alone. Of course, we explained our husbands had gone to the store and should be back any minute. He invited us to go partying with them, and of course, we told him thanks for the offer, but we were gonna wait for our husbands. At this point, Jana and I were both feeling very nervous. A highway patrol car then passed by, and the guy on the driver's side looked like he was freaking out then. He'd been nervously looking behind them and stuff, and finally said,
"Hey Cal, y'all get them in the car, and let's get the hell out of here, man."
Thank God, my husband's familiar vehicle drives up just a few seconds after he said that. The guy leaning against the van then got back inside, and Cal shook hands with my husband, looked kind of self-conscious, and kind of politely got back in the van, and they drove away. My creepometer lets me know when something or someone's not right, and at this point, it was rising to the top. My friend Jana had this wonderful protected childhood, and she doesn't always get a weird sense like I do. but she said they made her feel nervous. I hope they didn't mean it like they said it, but it made me feel as if they were thinking of forcing us into the van. Later, in retrospect, I wonder if the guy in the driver's seat was the lookout and Cal and his buddy leaning against the van were thinking of forcing us to go with them.